Tonight, our keynote speaker is your newly endorsed Senate candidate for the state of Iowa, our friend, our Congressman, Congressman Bruce Braley.
Again, thank you for giving me the great opportunity to share a few remarks about our remarkable class of inductees into the Hall of Fame. Betty, thank you for all your work to put together this fabulous convention. The food was great, everybody's happy, nobody's complaining. That's a successful convention, isn't it? I do want you to take a few minutes to turn to this page in your program, which lists all of the past Labor Hall of Fame inductees. A number of them are sitting at these two tables here. Let's give them a warm round of applause for the great contributions they've made. And all of you who know this gentleman sitting right in front of me know how terrifying it was for a first-time candidate who came to meet with him and talk about running for Congress. How many days ago was that I said 2,926 days ago, Mark? The Iowa Fed met in Waterloo in my backyard. And I made the big mistake of revealing one of my key primary election strategies to Mark Smith, something I will never do again. Because I told him I was thinking about doing a little hospitality event across the street at Doby Joey's and providing beer and pizza to union members. And Mark was aghast. And then he looked at me and he winked and said, "Don't do it, Bruce." And some of the best friends I've met in the labor movement were people who ignored Mark's restriction not to leave the Five Sullivan Brothers Center and walked across the street to say hello to me. And many of you are here in this audience, so Mark, it didn't work. You couldn't stop me, and we got the support that we needed to win that congressional seat. So thank you for all you did. About Mark's advice is he reminded me of one of my favorite clients in Cedar Rapids, and all of you in the Cedar Rapids labor movement know who I'm going to be talking about. Vern Dostal, who owned Dostal Catering. And one of Vern's favorite pieces of advice to me was the same advice I got from Mark Smith. And he had a really gruff voice, and he would say to me, "Bruce, don't bullshit a bullshitter." And that was one of the best pieces of advice you ever gave me, Mark. You always have called it the way you see it, and I've always appreciated your being straight with me. I want to take just a few minutes to talk about these amazing people that we're going to honor in just a few minutes. And I want to start with somebody that I knew long before I ever thought about running for Congress, Jan Lau. Jan has a lot of things in her background that are appealing, but Jan, the thing that my mom loves about you is that you're a UNI grad. And one of the most important things about you and your legacy to the Iowa labor movement is listed in the program. And that is that you were the first woman to be a full-time principal officer of the Iowa Federation of Labor. You have been breaking glass ceilings in the labor movement, and we are so honored to be with you on this special night. I knew Jan from her work on the Iowa Citizen Action Network, her work on the Iowa Workers' Compensation Advisory Committee, and I think that you landed in a great place in the work that you do now, because Across the state, thousands of retired Iowans benefit from your continued advocacy on their behalf, and they should give you a big thank you anytime they get a chance for standing up for them the way you stood up for the people in the labor movement all these years. So congratulations, Jan. Ron, you probably don't know this, but your father has something in common with my wife's grandfather, and that is they both worked for the Milwaukee Road. My wife's grandfather, for those of you from Dubuque, Pat, you probably know this, worked as a machinist for the Milwaukee Road just like his father did. And then World War I came along, and he enlisted in the Iowa National Guard and got sent out to Seattle, and got sent to France with those huge coastal artillery guns that they used as artillery weapons in World War I. And he came home from France after serving his country, and he decided that he wanted to do something else with his life. So he became a letter carrier, and he rose to become president of the Letter Carriers Union in Dubuque. And to honor him when he retired, the men and women in that local bought timber that was being salvaged from the White House during the Truman administration and fashioned it into a gavel that I have in my home in Waterloo as a reminder of the great work that men and women do in this state when they come together to organize to protect their rights in the workforce. So I am so proud that we are honoring you tonight. You answered the call of your country and served in the 1st Cavalry in Vietnam, and then you came home and led an extraordinary life and rose to the position of auditor in the Iowa Fed. And for all the people who don't know what that means, it means that these great people trusted you with their money. And that is a great, great thing. But I am so happy that you are back home with us where you belong. And we have the opportunity to honor you for what you did, all those years of sacrificing to make this a better place for men and women in labor, but for all Iowans. So congratulations. Ken, I have something in common with your father, because your dad worked on the Harrison County Roads Department, and I worked 4 summers for the Poweshiek County Roads Department, building bridges and maintaining roads and driving dump trucks so I could afford to go to college. And a lot of people in this room have heard this story about my boots, but on the last day before I got the chance to go to law school, I took those work boots I'd worn for 3 summers out in the yard, I poured gas on them, and I lit a match to them because I didn't think I was ever going to need those boots again. And then I started law school, and life threw me a curveball. And in my first year, my dad and both of his parents died. And my mom was a young widow living back in Brooklyn, Iowa, and I decided I needed to go home that summer and be there for her. And I called up the county engineer to beg for my job back, and he was gracious enough to give it to me, but I had a problem. I didn't have any boots. And I bought a pair of boots, and I still have those boots, and they're in my office in Washington, D.C., to remind me of the hard work that men and women do every day in this state to make this a better place to live. And I was really impressed when I read that about your dad. I also know that you became a lineman for Northwestern Bell in Winterset. And a lot of people know that John Wayne was born in Winterset, but a lot of people don't know that he moved with his father to Brooklyn, Iowa, where I grew up. And the house they lived in is still there on Jackson Street. And when they left to go to California, that house caught on fire. And I have a copy of his 1st grade report card from when he went to school in Brooklyn, Iowa. But like all of our inductees, you led an incredible life, rose to be vice president of the Iowa Federation of Labor, and something that meant so much to me was your service on the Central Committee of the Iowa Democratic Party and the Democratic National Committee. So I want to congratulate you with all your friends and family here We are honored by your presence, and thank you for everything you've done for the labor movement in Iowa. You know, we're coming up on an important anniversary in the labor movement. It's going to be next weekend, August 28th. 2013 will be the 50th anniversary of the March on Washington. An incredible moment in the civil rights movement of this country. And as Dr. King and the people who went to Washington for that march walked and stood on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, they were surrounded by leaders from the labor movement. And it's important for us to pause and remember how important labor has been to advancing the cause of civil rights and human rights in this country. And I didn't come here to read to you tonight, but I have a story that I want to share with you, because when I ran for Congress, John Paget in Waterloo gave me this book, Solidarity and Survival, The History of the Iowa Labor Movement. And I didn't put it aside like so many of the books I get. I read it immediately and I couldn't put it down. Because this book is full of fascinating stories of people who didn't have the benefits of the protection we have today, who struggled when their activism in the labor movement was literally a life and death matter. And there's one story in here that I love, because to me it summarizes what's great about the labor movement in Iowa. And I really love this story because it's about someone from Waterloo. His name was Edwin Hollins, and he worked at the John Deere foundry in Waterloo, but he also drove trucks on the side. And he decided that working in the foundry was not what he wanted to spend the rest of his life doing. So he started driving trucks and he became a teamster. This story is set in 1950, so please indulge me while I share it. This is in his own voice. When I started driving in 1950, there was only one other black driver. I remember one place we used to stop in Savannah, Illinois. 5 of us, we all got out of our trucks and went in. This was the first trip for me. The waitress, she got all keyed up. She went and told the boss that the Iowa outfit from Waterloo had got a black driver on today. How are we going to do with that? Well, fix him something to eat, and he can go outside and eat it in his truck. They didn't really refuse to give me food, but I could tell it went that he thought that he was going to have a little trouble with the local yokels. What the hell? A guy came out and he had mine all fixed up. Takeaway. So Bobby Rose says, "Where the hell are you going?" I said, "I'm going out to have some lunch." He said, "You're not going to sit down with us?" I said, "Well, no. It's kind of against the local policy here for me to be eating in here." And man, them guys got up and said, "You eat in here or won't no goddamn body ever eat in here again." These are the guys I work with, run with, hell, slept with in Chicago when we had our own place. So the manager came out and said, "Well, it just hasn't been past practice." And Bob Rose told him, "God damn it, it is here today. How would you like to have 6 of those son of a bitches drive right into this place with you in here?" The guy says, "I don't think we'd appreciate it." He says, "Well, God damn it, we don't appreciate this shit you're doing to him either." That guy took that back and he put it on a plate and came back and set it down, so me and the boys sat there and had our lunch. And I thanked them. Now, if that is not something to be proud of, when you think back the way living conditions were here in Iowa in 1950, I don't know what is. That story is why I defend the labor movement in Congress. Because I know it has advanced the cause to create better working conditions, safer working conditions, and expanded opportunities for economic prosperity to all people in the state of Iowa. And I know that my family and I benefit from that. So, before I was elected to Congress, I used to spend a lot of time in the state capitol. And if you go there and you look up in the rotunda, you'll see all of these sayings that they inscribed up there when that Capitol was built over 100 years ago. My favorite one is this: the ideal state, that in which an injury done to the least of its citizens is an injury done to all. To me, that is the essence of the labor movement. And that's why I'm a Democrat. And so if you come to my office in Washington, D.C., you'll see a poster on the wall of my favorite movie, The Shawshank Redemption. And I love that movie because it's about hope, and it's about suffering, and it's about survival, and it's about redemption. But my favorite line of that movie is this: it all comes down to a simple choice, really. Either get busy living or get busy dying. My friends, it's time for those of us who support the organized labor movement to get busy living, to stand up for what's right, to speak truth to fear, Bruce, wherever you are, since you called me out on that, and to work to create a better life for the people who don't even know it's out there waiting for them. Thank you very much. Give these great people the benefit of your thanks who have advanced the cause of justice in the labor movement and are being celebrated here tonight. Thank you very much.